Ipswich, February 29th, 2024 school committee meeting. We already called to order a while ago, so we are in open session. And Jimmy, would you mind reading the district mission statement for us, please?
Ipswich Public Schools aspires to empower all students to be global citizens who are effective communicators, analytical problem solvers, and savvy consumers of information. We propose to do this through an emphasis on communication, critical thinking, creativity, self-management, perseverance, and collaboration. Students will be active partners in authentic learning, offering voice and choice and demonstrating competency.
Thank you. Okay, announcements. First announcement is we do not have a support staff here today to take our notes, so I'm going to ask everybody to please speak into the microphone so we can record the minutes after the meeting. All right, so announcements. The next regular school committee meeting will be held next Thursday, March 7th at 7 p.m. in this room, the Middle School High School Ensemble Room. The school committee will present their FY25 budget to the Finance Committee on Tuesday, March 5th and Wednesday, March 6th. Both meetings will be held at 7:30 p.m. in Meeting Room A at Town Hall. So that is 3 meetings next week, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. And also the School Facilities Working Group will meet remotely on Tuesday, March 5th at 5:30. Do we have any other announcements? All right. Special acknowledgements.
None this evening for me.
Does anybody else have special acknowledgement? Okay. Remarks from the chair. I do have a couple this week. I just handed out these hot pink bracelets. I went to a talk from Kathy and Chris Sullivan, organized by Ipswich Aware on Tuesday night, and it was excellent. It was on substance abuse and underage drinking, and it was very powerful and positive, oddly positive. It was a really horrible story, but Kathy, the mother, was very strong and powerful and positive, and she wanted everybody to come down for hugs at the end, and it was like, she was just really sweet. So it was very well received, I think, by the high school students. I'm going to ask Jimmy to weigh in a minute. There was very low attendance by parents, which was pretty disappointing because I think it was advertised pretty well. So that was kind of disappointing. But I'm glad at least the students all got to see it and hear it. I think it was a very great message. So, and I wanted to announce that they are talking on May 1st at Gloucester High School. So I would encourage everyone to attend, everyone here and everyone listening at home. It was really great talk and very much worth it, I think. So again, Gloucester High School, May 1st. I don't have the time, but it's evening. And ask your kids, I think, about it. I had good conversations with both my kids about it, so I'd recommend that. And their website is Sullivan with an S, so sullivansmessage.com for details, and you can sign up. And that's where the bracelets came from. So, so thank you to Ipswich Aware for organizing that, and I would encourage everyone to go. Jimmy, do you have anything to weigh in on the student perspective on that?
I think students received it very well because a lot of times when we have presenters come in, it's very harsh, like, don't do this, like, we're going to tell you what to do, what not to do, you've done something wrong, we're bringing somebody in to then educate you. But this was completely different. The way they presented was through storytelling, and that was really powerful, I think, the way they did it, because it wasn't like, don't do this, don't do that, but take care of the people you surround yourselves with. Make sure you're being responsible. Make good choices. That was the underlying message, not don't, which
Yeah.
I think is really powerful.
Yeah.
Is better received.
Yeah, good. Yeah, that's good. I can email that feedback to them and to Ipswich Aware too, because I think I haven't seen a presentation like that since my kids have been here, so I think it was great. Yeah, and I agree. It was, I won't tell the story, but there was a series of many small
Mishaps.
decisions by many different people that led to a horrible outcome, and any one of those decisions could have changed the course of events. So it wasn't like one kid got into a car and made a bad choice. It was like lots of little things that, ended horribly. But so, it was, and the parent talk, similarly, she had a lot of great sort of tips for parents about just, ways to connect with their kids and ways to know what's going on in their lives. And so it was worth it.
I'm going to talk a little bit about it in my superintendent's
Good.
report later as well.
So that was that. I also wanted to talk a little bit about the Payne Grant Committee. We're trying to firm that committee up because the cycle starts pretty quickly. We have a couple openings. We have a community at large position open and a local business rep. We have gotten 3 applications for that, so that's exciting. So we need to sort of talk about timing to get those folks in for appointments to that committee.
Peter Ginolfi is going to take over the admin rep on that.
And you were going to follow up with us trying to get a student rep.
We're talking about it tomorrow morning.
So, and there's an elementary parent who we could, whose term is up, who is interested in continuing if we would like to reappoint that position. That parent is interested as well. So we can follow up online about scheduling those folks to come in and those appointments either next week or at our March 21st meeting. Then I also wanted to let everybody know that Jenny is making a list of all of our appointments, because I think we've realized in the last few months we actually have several appointments. So Jenny's, I don't know if you've offered, asked you, and you gratefully accepted to help us make just a quick spreadsheet of all of our appointments, who they are, what the position is, when their term is up, just so we can have a good handle on being on top of those, because it did took a while to fill this Payne Grant Committee, and I feel like we've ended up putting a lot more effort into it than we needed to, because we didn't realize how many positions were up. So we will have that on our drive to sort of keep an eye on what's coming up. And that's it for my remarks. Do we have any public comments this evening? Seeing none, we will move on to the high school student representative report from Jimmy.
All right, good evening, everyone. Tonight I wanted to start off by talking about the Spain trip that took place over February break, which was a great experience for students. I think it was only offered to juniors and seniors this year, just to go and practice their Spanish, use what they're learning from 8th grade until whenever, and really be immersed in a different culture. It's an eye-opening experience, and I think a lot of students had the opportunity to go that may not have been able to go across the Atlantic because of the reduction that we did get in the price as well, that added to it as well. But also it was very well, I'm very happy that we also had the addition of a adjustment counselor on our trip, because that helped ease some issues, and that was an additional chaperone that didn't take on any actual students per them. It was, I don't know how to actually word it, but they weren't allocated to a certain number of students. So it was an additional chaperone, but it didn't raise the price of the trip for the students to then be able to have access to that person throughout the week. So that trip was amazing. And I think Senora Harvey, my mom, is hoping to do some sort of presentation after the French trip gets back as well, so towards the end of the year. And then I was also going to mention the presentation that was done on Tuesday. And yeah, students really, really enjoyed this presentation because it was very moving. It wasn't a lecture. We got to hear real stories, hold a Super Bowl ring. It was a cool story. Or not a cool story, but cool experience, I guess. And anyways, I also just wanted to talk about what's upcoming for students. And the countdown to April break begins. It's a little bit of a long haul, but luckily, with Bridge, it gets cut even shorter for some seniors, but everybody else has only got a number of weeks left before then. And that's basically it. Tomorrow in Advisory Council, we're going to talk about a few things as well that will be reported on social media afterwards.
Great. Yeah, and if you don't follow the Advisory Council on Instagram, I do, so you should follow it. It's the IHS Advisory Council.
Yeah, it's as simple as Charlie, I think, could make it.
Just a quick question. It was nice to hear about the counselor on the
Yeah.
Spain trip. I'm curious, we've got the French trip coming up. I don't know if you know or anybody knows if they're going to do the same
I
thing.
think there's a guidance counselor that's going.
Okay.
So it's the same thing, so it's nice, the chaperones are given a group of 6 students, so every chaperone except for the guidance counselor does not have a group of 6 students. So they can just be helpful wherever is needed. They won't be responsible for checking certain students, checking rooms, they're only going to be there as support for any students that need it.
That's great. Thank you.
I'll say that into the microphone. So for the French trip, no, it's okay. For the, so we have someone remotely recording our notes. So, so for the French trip, there's going to be a guidance counselor who won't have the students assigned to them, but will be sort of an extra support staff member available to students that won't have the responsibilities of a chaperone. So that's great for both of those trips. Other questions for Jimmy? When does Bridge start?
Week after April 5th. That's the last day.
Who's
That's
counting?
all I know.
Who's
yeah.
counting now? You're like 27 days.
I think the applications are going out tomorrow the applications are going out tomorrow, the employment paperwork, I should say,
Yeah.
is going out tomorrow for the 17 or 18 students that will be working in the district.
Yeah.
So,
All right, thank you. We will move on to presentations. Our IEA snapshot presentation is actually canceled. Unfortunately, Demi McShane was unable to make it, so we will have her back on the 21st. Did we agree on the 21st? Either next week or the 21st, we will have her back for the IEA snapshot. So we're actually going to skip that tonight, which brings us only 4 minutes behind schedule to the overnight field trip request. Do you want to take it one at a time so we
Yep.
can do the Quebec trip first? So you should have some information in your meeting packet about this.
I'm Lauren Hover, the French teacher at the high school. So you did receive hopefully a copy of the proposed itinerary. I did have a slideshow, but I'll just look on from here. Basically, overall highlights, it would be next February 2025, 3 nights, 4 days, from a Thursday to a Sunday. It would be February 6th through the 9th. And the reason it's those dates is because we wanted to experience the Quebec Winter Carnival that happens every year in February. So it does not align with our February vacation if we want to be able to experience the Winter Carnival. So we would be missing the Thursday and Friday of school in order to experience the carnival dates. We're hoping to have students use the language that we use in the classroom in real-world situations, ordering in restaurants and shops, and experience the French Quebecois culture. Some highlights from the itinerary: there's a dinner in a sugar shack, followed by a presentation of traditional song and dance, dog sledding adventure, tours of Montmorency Falls, which is a waterfall just north of Quebec City. It's actually higher than Niagara Falls, not as wide, but higher. The Hotel de Glace, which is the ice hotel that's built every year for the Winter Carnival. Chateau Frontenac, Old Quebec City, which is a UNESCO World Heritage Site. And also an illuminated night walk to learn about the Huron-Wendat tribes' culture. And then all of the events and activities that go along with the Winter Carnival activities that are happening on those dates. I did a preliminary questionnaire just out to French class parents and students, and I got back to around 20 definite yeses and around 20 maybes, so I would anticipate somewhere between 20 to 40 students wanting to sign up. You can see at the end of the itinerary it has, if we have 30 plus participants, the cost is $1,416, 26 to 29, $1,486, 22 to 25, $1,602. I would hope to apply for a grant to hopefully bring that cost down, especially for students in financial need. That price includes all breakfasts and dinners, hotel, transportation, and all of the activities included in the itinerary. If there's any questions?
And this is the first time taking this?
This trip, yes. So as of right now, I am thinking opening it to next year's sophomores, juniors, seniors. Depending on how many I get, I may possibly open it to next year's freshmen, making then it wouldn't need to do the trip as often. If I don't open it up to freshmen next year, then I would hope to offer it perhaps their senior year, so that they would at least get the chance at some point. But I just don't want to take too big. I don't want to take 50 students and have it be too overwhelming of a large group. But I'm going to kind of see what the numbers look like with next year's sophomores, juniors, seniors, and go from there.
And I can assume you're sort of coming before us so early because of the pain grant, and is it less expensive if, I'm assuming if you book it earlier?
Especially during the dates of the Winter Carnival, hotels book up very quickly. So the tour group, so we would be using Forum by Promotora, which is the same tour group. The Spain trip I'm using on the France trip in April, and I've traveled with them before to France as well when I worked at Beverly High. So I'm very happy with this company, and they suggest booking a year in advance, especially for the dates of the carnival. Hotel, especially if we have a group of 20 to 30 students, booking the restaurant, all of those things definitely needs to be done ahead of time significantly.
And with the trip, the school committee, if the school committee were to say yes to this evening, the grant, the Payne grant isn't necessarily a slam dunk. I know the last round of Payne grants, there were some questions around the amount of funding for the trips and what parents should be responsible for. So what does that look like if the Payne grant either isn't supported at all or is not a lot of money? I mean, I don't know how much you would apply for the Payne grant. Do you have any ideas about that?
For France, we applied for a 50% reduction per student and then 65% if students qualified for free and reduced lunch. That was more expensive being a longer trip and airfare. So I'm not sure yet. Not sure what I would do for this one. This is significantly less expensive, shorter trip.
Do you have questions or comments?
Sounds like a wonderful trip. I think we all may have to go back to experience winter if we want.
Want a chaperone?
Yeah, exactly. No, sure. The work of my French. No, I was at the work of my French, but yeah, go ahead.
Do you have a sense of how many students that are going on the France trip this year would be interested in doing this trip? And I guess what's the frequency that you're looking to do experiences, whether they're Europe or somewhere
So
else?
this year's France trip is only open to juniors and seniors. So by next year, it would just be the current juniors that this trip would also be open to. I'd have to look at the numbers. I'm not sure how many were interested in both, maybe 10 to 12 students. So, and then for the Quebec trip, it would be also next year's sophomores who are not open to the current French trip. My hope would be to be able to offer in the 4 years that if they're studying French all 4 years, to be able to go to Quebec and go to France at one point during their 4 years. It's kind of my dream, if that's possible.
Everyone's looking at me. Other questions? Sorry. Okay. Do we, so I know we have had some discussions in some of the past presentations about field trips, about sort of thinking about field trips sort of holistically as a district and having some conversations. I do feel like nothing about the merit or value of the trips in particular, but I just feel like we've had a lot of increase in trips, and especially international trips. And I know we've had some conversations about, do we need to just put some attention into thinking about that, and sort of perhaps having a schedule or some sort of parameters around how many trips. Because I think about things like, financial strain on parents, financial pressures on local businesses, financial pressures on Payne grants. So I'm not in any way against overnight field trips. I just know we've had some of those conversations. And so at some point I want to sort of, and I know we keep saying at some point we should talk about, I'm interested in talking about that sooner rather than later, just to talk about, should we put any more parameters on international trips? So I don't know if anyone has thoughts about that.
I think it's a worthy discussion to have. Obviously, I think just, if no other reason, to get our arms around it, but
Yeah.
I think there's no more valuable thing than experiential learning, particularly in languages. We used to do a trip when I was at my old school that went to Denmark, and the Danish students do 3 trips a year. Now admittedly, for them to go to Germany and France, is a little bit easier, but it really did wonders for their linguistic skills and opening them up to different cultures and stuff like that. So, I think it's a hugely important thing for American kids to do.
Yeah.
And Quebec does feel like a different country, very much a different country,
Yeah.
separate from even parts of Canada, So you kind of get a really kind of unique slice right there that's not terribly far away. But to
Right.
your point,
Yeah.
I think having some framework for this wouldn't hurt.
We do also, in our mission statement, just briefly looking at it, we do use the exact language we encourage or empower all students to be global citizens, and these trips sound like they're literally enabling that exactly.
Yeah, and again, I'm not in any way against international trips. I just note they have been increasing in frequency, and I just want to at least put some thought into just sort of a big picture.
Especially since they were off the table for so many years with COVID.
Right.
So
Yeah.
now everyone's kind of like,
Yeah.
let's do them again.
Yeah.
And they're sort of
And they're all,
backing each
yeah.
other because it's all happening at one time, being able
Yeah.
to start them up again.
Yeah. I mean, I also think for parents, it's nice to, like, for example, the England trip, it's like it's a known commodity. I mean, kids coming out of middle school know, like, I'm going to be a junior, or I'm going to be a senior, if you're in the band, orchestra, or chorus. So just having some sort of like a map of, these are the years that we have the French and Spanish trips, and this is the England trip. And so I think we could certainly come up with something that encompasses, a variety of trips.
My understanding before the meeting started, talking to Lawyer LaFrance, was that in the past, that was the case where there was a trip, the department heads talked amongst themselves and had some sort of a schedule, right?
Yeah, and I'd be happy to have teachers involved in that conversation. It doesn't need to be us telling you what we think
Right.
is good, because you're the ones that have taken these trips, and so, but just having those conversations, like which ones are, cost effective, which ones are, the most sort of bang for your buck in getting that great experience. So
Also,
I think-
too, like all these trips seem to be like in their pilot year. So
Right.
as we look ahead, going for, okay, we just completed the Spain trip. If that's going to happen again, then have that conversation. Okay, so looking at the England trip, looking at any other trips that after they've been completed where they want to go, then that might be a better time to have that conversation of if we do want to have a map or a plan, then
Right, like what worked and what was great
Exactly,
about this
yeah.
trip,
Yeah.
what would we do differently? But that's a good idea, too.
before just slicing them before they get to be tried out.
Okay.
As well as the staggered,
Yeah.
just staggering of it. I know one senior that will be very disappointed that Quebec wasn't her year, but I just think this is a wonderful opportunity. And just, when the kids come back from England and the music trip, it's just such a global experience.
Yeah.
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 They could be looked at separately from the grants. I mean, maybe if this gets approved and then I don't end up getting the grant money, then students could look into other fundraising, or there could be sort of two separate things. The trip is approved, but not the grant, and then we have to explore other avenues for raising money or fundraising or
Right.
things like that.
Yeah.
My opinion would be to sort of take it under advisement, because I do feel like we have a little bit of time, but I'll open it up to the committee, and, I would like to see some sort of wider discussion, either the FEFI policy, the FEFI group, or the policy group, look at our field trip policies, but what do other people think?
I would, just given the timing and sort of what you were saying about reservations and the cost, I would propose we vote on this one tonight. I do agree about, we need to do a follow-up, and maybe let's do it sooner than later, because I would anticipate additional field trips coming. I think the spirit of that, from what I've heard from everyone tonight, is it's about how do we make it equitable for all students, not about limiting the number that we're doing and doing it in that way, including cost, grants, everything like that. So I would suggest, or my thought would be, let's proceed and vote on this tonight. And let's, in short order, put together that conversation. I agree, it's administrators, teachers, I think some of the students, I would imagine, would be good contributors to it. But let's do that so we're prepared for the next time something comes.
But as like a clarifying question too, I think Ms. Hover brought it up too, though. If the field trip is to be approved, that doesn't mean the Payne grant already did a 50% reduction. Like, that's a whole different process, right?
Right.
It's not like, okay, it's not a one and done.
Right, yep,
One thing, just from a teacher's perspective, like I said, so far I'm opening it up to sophomores, juniors, seniors. If I were to also open it up to freshmen, it grows the group and the size and all of that. So making it more frequent trips with smaller numbers, like the France trip and the Spain trip was only open to juniors and seniors. So I know Spain was 16 students, 15 students. France is 27 already with just juniors and seniors. So it's just a matter of keeping the group manageable. Maybe
Right.
if I make this, if we do the Quebec trip, maybe I try 30, 40 and see how that goes. I mean, like we said, we're kind of trying these out again since COVID.
right.
And seeing how big the size get. But if we made them less frequent, that would grow the size significantly. And also bringing freshmen who don't have the language ability that the juniors and seniors have.
Right.
So taking them to France when they've only been in French for, less than a year.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yep. All right, how do other people feel?
Yeah, I'm with Sasha on that. I think that given the nature of this particular one, at least, that it behooves us to move on it. But having, with the caveat that that conversation should be happening very soon. But I think having a couple extra stakeholders in that conversation would be valuable.
Anyone else?
As long as everyone understands that the approval of the trip isn't contingent on the funding source.
Yes.
And I think something else we can have at that conversation is the fundraising part of it. And
I think even from a grant perspective, we could
Yeah.
think about how do we think about grants for field trips overall?
Yeah,
Instead of individual ones, and what does that look like? So they're not individual ones that are necessarily competing with each other.
right.
I think there's a couple things we can do there
Yeah.
that, again, benefit everybody.
Yeah.
That do not restrict the field trips that are coming forward. Yeah.
Great. Anyone have a motion?
I move to support the, what's it called? I'm looking for the title of it. The overnight field trip to Quebec on, I'm sorry, I lost the dates.
February of 2025.
February.
February 6th,
6th through
25.
through 9th? 6th through 9th on February 2025.
I'll second that.
All right, moved by Jen, second by Sasha. Any other discussion? All in favor? All right, 6, 7, 7 to 0.
Okay.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so I'll put that on a future agenda to sort of come up with, figure out who would need to be on a group and when we can sort of start those discussions. Thank
You're up.
you. All right.
Yeah.
Good evening, Dr. Blake, members of the school committee. My name is Jeff Krieger. I'm a course to you for March of 2025 to Yellowstone National Park. Fantastic opportunity. We'd like to do a couple things. I know some of you know me because your children went with me on Model UN or even to DC. So we just want to introduce ourselves because we don't know all of you, and then talk about the trip, and then, of course, answer any questions that you have.
Jeff, you're going to think I'm crazy, but we need you to talk right into that microphone because we don't have anybody taking minutes. You came in late. We don't have anybody taking minutes, so it's going to be off the recording.
Do I have to do that
so-
whole thing again, or no?
No.
Okay.
I think Laura knows who you are.
Hi, good evening. Thank you so much for having us here tonight. I'm Lori LaFrance. I've been teaching science here at the high school for the last 18 years. I teach mostly environmental science, but also marine and coastal science, sustainability scholars, biology. And I have had some experience in the past leading an international trip. I went on a trip to Costa Rica with 12 students, and to say it was life-changing is actually not my words. Those are words from students who I am still in touch with to this day, even though that was quite a few years ago, who have told me, shared their careers, their college careers with me. It has affected their life, so.
Yeah, and once again, I'm Jeff Krieger. This is my 21st year at Ipswich High School, and I'm in the Social Studies Department. I teach Criminology Forensic Science, a criminal justice class, American Government, Constitutional Law, and World History 9. And in those 21 years, for 20 of the years, I was the advisor for the Model UN Club. So every year we went on at least one trip to Boston. We also went to Dartmouth, Cornell, and I have valued those trips tremendously. And in addition to that, I was also the advisor for several years for the Close-Up Washington, D.C. program. And so for several years, I took anywhere from 12 to 30 students to Washington for, the buzzword is experiential learning, but that's what it was. And the growth that we saw with students was quite astounding. And again, for those of you who have children who participate in Model UN or the Close-Up trip, I think you can see that. Also, Lori and I have been working together, of course, for several years, but more closely, we've worked on co-curriculum stuff where one of our great accomplishments was we did a unit about climate change, where I taught an American government class, Lori taught an environmental science class, and the intersection of the two came together really, really well. And that's why we're here today. The course to Yellowstone is a fantastic opportunity to combine science as well as the teachings and the exploration that we do in our civics work at the high school. So with that, I'll turn over to Lori to start talking about the trip and give you all the information that we have.
I will tell you about the drug company that we are using. It is called Ecology Project International. I'll refer to it as EPI. And what they do is they give educational courses in different locations. And so the students who would travel on this trip are doing 30 hours of coursework and 20 hours of service learning work. They would be actually eligible for college credit for this course. And EPI, they've been in the business since the year 2000. They're a nonprofit company. They're very small. They're out of Billings, Montana. And so they've taken more than 50,000 students on trips. They have a great safety record. Myself, they do not only student trips, they also do professional development trips, and I was able to go to the Galapagos Islands with them in the summer of 2022. I was very impressed with how they kept us safe. 16 wild teachers in the Galapagos Islands. They kept us safe, well-fed. When we all got the stomach bug, they took very good care of us. So, yeah, it was impressive, the level of knowledge and safety that their guides have. All of their guides have an extensive criminal background check done. They are all wilderness first aid certified, and I can't say enough about the company.
Yeah, so the course itself, as Lori mentioned, it's a combination of coursework and fieldwork. And as we looked in the PAIN grant, you know, one of the things we keep asking and addressing is how will this not only reach these students but go beyond? And with the coursework, we're really confident that what we do out in Yellowstone will come back to Ipswich tenfold. So just the logistics of the trip, we'd fly from Boston to Bozeman, Montana, and then it's about a 70-mile ride to the Yellowstone Lodge, which is in Gardner, Montana, North Yellowstone Lodge. And then there we'll settle in for 8 nights. We're met with guides from Yellowstone National Park, including members of the National Park Service. And we will, on each day, do something different. It is a combination of field work. One day, it would be tracking wolves, wolf packs. The other day, it would be bison. There's snowshoeing. There is a lot of science involved. And at the same time, from a government perspective, we'll talk about the impact of the government on our national park service. Of course, Yellowstone's the oldest national park in the Park Service. One of the things that we also have worked on with our partners at EPI is we would bring, we think on a daily basis, what the students are doing in Yellowstone back to Ipswich. So one of our ideas is Montana's in mountain time zone, so it's 2 hours before. So before we start a day, and I've talked a little with Amy Gregory about this, we would zoom in to the elementary schools. And if you can imagine how cool that would be to have high school students on a live feed from Yellowstone answering questions and showing the science work they do. So hopefully inspiring students to become interested. So whether it's snow science or whether it's working with the National Park Service to understand how it works, it's truly a course. And again, students, when it's done, students are able to, for an incredibly, I wish we could get this, for $150 per credit, students can get credit through the University of Montana. So it's really a unique opportunity.
So as far as logistics go, we would be traveling the week of March 8th. The reason why that week works really well is it's because in between the winter sports and the spring sports schedule, so everybody would be able to apply to go on the trip. It is also the time of year when the big five of Yellowstone, the bison, the bear, the elk, the wolves, and the moose, really start to migrate out of their winter homes and come back down into the valleys. And so EPI says that it's the perfect time to bring students because they'd really see a lot. They increase their chances of seeing a lot. We would be bringing a maximum of 13 students in grades 10 through 12. So this year's 9th, 10th, and 11th graders. And staying at the North Yellowstone Lodge in Gardner, Montana. We would be the only group traveling. Our guides would stay with us constantly. They'll live with us. So Ipswich students would only be rooming with Ipswich students. We would be the only ones there. And as far as cost goes, the 2025 costs haven't been finalized by EPI yet. They said they'd be out probably in a couple of weeks. Right now, it is $2,795 for the course. They didn't anticipate that it would go up too much from there, definitely not more than 10%, probably a lot less. That covers everything. So that is all the programming costs, it is all transfers and transportation costs, it's every single meal, everything. They don't even accept gratuities. So it is all inclusive. The only thing that we would have to do would be to get airfare to go there. So Jeff and I have been looking into airfare. If we were to book it right now, it's $300, which is quite cheap for a round trip to Montana. We are trying to budget $500 to $700 just to be on the safe side, but we anticipate that it would be less than that. So yes, also EPI does offer financial aid. Families can apply on their own. Confidentially, we would have nothing to do with it, through the company, and they do offer financial aid. We will be, if approved, we will be writing a PAIN grant for, as the other trips have, 50% to reduce the cost and to try to make that accessible to all of our students. We feel like this supports our DEI initiatives to make this trip as accessible as possible. And we also feel that the trip supports our sustainability initiatives in the district too.
It's really something unique, and Lori and I have been working on this for quite some time. You know, any field trip that I've brought to this school committee has been experiential learning. It has been not just, hey, we're going somewhere. I sort of feel like I'm on Shark Tank going right after another field trip presentation.
Hopefully we're not that mean.
So we are asking for funding for it. But it's really unique, and you'll hear, we have not said the F word. We haven't said field trip, because it's truly a course. We will have meetings before where students are engaged. We'll have meetings after. One of the commitments students will make is they will participate in the STEAM showcase. That will be, a commitment that they will make. So we're looking at this as a fantastic opportunity for students to engage with themselves, but also to bring this back to Ipswich and really showcase everything that they've done. I think as Lori and I have talked quite a bit, we really look at this as just an absolutely fantastic opportunity. And we've started, we started the planning, and we've started thinking about how we could really make this bigger than just 12 or 13 students going to Yellowstone. It's an absolutely unique opportunity. It's not an opportunity, if you go to Yellowstone with your family, this is not the opportunity you're getting. And students will be doing work. Can we say something about the Okay, so this is sort of a secret, so you can't tell students this.
You are
They
on
haven't-
live TV, but that's
I
good.
don't know. I'm not sure how many of my students are watching tonight.
A reporter
Although
behind you.
Jimmy's going to go back. EPI has an unplugged policy for students. Like, right? Unplugged. They, as Lori said, safety and security is paramount, so parents will always have a number to reach us and EPI, but students will not have access to their phones for the week.
They will be going through withdrawal.
They will.
like
They will. They will. But
Till they see their first bison.
Yeah,
Is it
yeah.
before they sign up or after?
But they'll have cameras, right? Hopefully they'll have cameras, and that's part of it. And when EPI told us that on the conference call, we said kind of the same thing. You said, like, I'm not going to name any students, but what will this person do? And his response is they actually sort of enjoy it once they get used to it. They're like, I don't have someone texting me. I don't have to worry about it. And we asked, like, well, what about in the lodge? No. There's no cell phones. They don't use them during the week. And that is a huge bonus. To get anyone unplugged, especially high school students, is something really special. So, there's so many things we could tell you about it. You've got information in the packet. We're really, really excited about it. It's a great opportunity for Lori and I to work together and to bring these students to, again, our oldest national park.
Why only 13 to 15?
So we travel in a van. So there is a van, and so that is it's a 6-to-1 ratio. So that's the maximum.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's opened up to it will be opened up to all 10th, 11th, 12th graders, or is it only people taking your 2 classes? Or
All 10th, 11th, and 12th graders.
So is there going to be a lottery, or I'm just wondering, what if there's 60
Yeah.
kids interested?
We've talked about that. We don't know the how to gauge interest yet. And again, I'll say I dealt with this with Model UN. We would have 60 kids say they're interested, and then we'd have with Model UN we had a tryout question, which the question might be identify what's the most pressing issue facing the United Nations today. And you start with 60. Of those 60, there's a handful that just don't want to do the work. And I think this is very unique. It's a course. And when we tell them, you'll be waking up, you'll be doing work, you'll be hiking 2 miles, I think that'll limit it. And then we've got some ideas as far as getting the right group. But also, Lori mentioned, we strongly believe in the DEI initiative. And for students who come from low-income families, a paying grant, even if it reduces the cost by 50%, they still won't be able to go. So we want to help them more, but we will not know who those kids are, by the way. That'll be done by the administration.
Yeah.
One last thing to mention too is that during the whole week, the kids will be doing a research project, independent Anchor-based research project, that then they will present the last night of the course. They'll have something to bring back, hopefully share with you.
Is this, I don't have the school calendar in front of me, is this during our break next year? 'Cause I know the break is a little bit off next year.
Yeah,
It's
no,
not-
it's,
this
it's
is-
the
so
week
this
of
is a
March 8th.
week.
So we talked to Tom Gallagher, the athletic director.
Okay.
And it's the same week, by the way, that the close-up trip was, where we take students out a week for a course. The reason we like the week, it's between winter and spring sports. And, you know, other than this week, there is no other break for high school athletes. So that's why we selected the week. It's also, as Lori said, a great week for the, was it the Big Five? The Big Five.
You said something about the superintendent needs to go on this trip, too?
You can't have his phone, though.
Yes, always.
Absolutely. If that's what it takes, that's what it takes.
All right, I love the, I mean, I'm a little jealous of this trip, but, no, I love that you spoke to tying it back to, you know, to zoom in with the elementary school kids and come back and report on the STEAM showcase. I think that's important to, because it will be so few students, but to really kind of bring it back to the district, I think is important. And that will help with your Payne grant too, because I know they look at projects that, you know, benefit the, you know, the more kids, the better. And I did some back of the phone math, looked like potentially like $50,000 for Payne grant, if it's half of the cost, or, I mean, it's not gonna be,
Our
Less
numbers
than
were
that?
closer
Okay.
to 30, and that
Okay.
would, yeah, and we did some iterations, so depending on the number of students who are free and reduced lunch.
Okay.
But
Less,
with 13
okay.
students, 50%, and
okay.
closer to 30.
Okay, yeah, so,
How do other teachers feel about students going out for a week? I'm a little naive with the high school schedule. What's the plan for keeping up with classroom work?
Yeah, it's a really important question. There are teachers who think it's a great idea and they embrace it, and there are also teachers who question it. And again, my experience, I've dealt with both teachers. The key is that students know and that they'll let their teachers know. So in a given week, a student will miss each class 3 times. So they don't do the same class, you know, every day, so they miss 3 times. The vast majority of teachers are understanding and embrace it, and understand that, you know, this is not a trip. We're not going surfing. So by letting teachers know weeks in advance of the list of students who are going, they can plan, and also making students accountable for the work that they have to do is critical. It's part of the success.
I love the cross-curricular nature of this whole thing, too, because I think those two of those sides are just fantastic to kind of put together, so.
questions?
I have one other comment just on the Payne grant piece. You mentioned that the
Can you speak into the microphone, sorry for Laura.
college credit was an additional $150 per credit. It would be a shame that students complete the coursework but then don't get the credit because that's an additional fee. And I wonder if maybe in the grant, you know, again, you're not going to know how many kids are going to want that or going to be college bound or whatever, but maybe include that as part of your consideration of the total cost of the trip.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point. And yeah, that's a good point.
Other questions? Concerns? Motions?
Can I ask one more question?
Yes?
This is obviously a pilot, but would the idea be that this becomes a recurring trip, or is this a, you know, I guess, what are we setting ourselves up for? Is this another sort of calendar looking into the frequency and variety of trips that we're doing, or is this sort of, we're going to try it, we're going to see?
So I think that's in part going to depend on your conversations that you've been talking about having. I know that last year, I had talked to my department head, Emily Chandler, about, you know, can the department heads get together and say, maybe science could have a trip this year, and then maybe, you know, of course, we're doing interdisciplinary, but, you know, for example, and then maybe world language could have a trip this year, and so forth. And so if that happened, of course, it would fall along the similar schedule as the England trip, right? So it would be approximately every 4 years. Personally, I would love to do this every year, but I think that's sustainable in itself.
So I'm going to answer that differently. I would like this, if it's a success, to be an annual thing. If it's a success, this is not, again, this is not just a trip to another place. This is a course with real work, and students are going to be working. And so that'll lend itself to certain students who go on the trip as well. I obviously understand the concerns with field trips and the fact that school committee has, the authority, and you should decide what's right. But the close-up trip ran every single year, and it was an incredible success. Similar to Lori's experience, students said it was life-changing. I don't know if any of you went on the close-up trip, but I've had parents come up to me and say that. So I'll be a little more bold and say if it goes really well, I would expect to be in front of you next year giving you a report and saying, we'd love to do this again. Mr. Mitchell might not always agree with that, but that's where we're coming.
Is there, you mentioned the close-up trip. I remember that being the same timing. Is there any conflict with these being run next year or just in general?
The close-up trip is not, as of now, no one has picked up the baton
Okay.
for close-up.
That was a great trip, though.
Yeah,
Yeah, my daughter Sarah went on it, and
Yes, she
because
did.
they missed the 8th grade
Right.
Washington trip, so she was able to pick up that trip, and it was great.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I love the idea of this trip, and I will reiterate that I do want to have that conversation, because I think mapping things out, thinking about how much of our paying funds, we want to allocate. We're super fortunate in this district to have these paying funds, so I want to use them. I just want to make sure we're, being thoughtful about allocating them to certain areas and making sure the trips are equitable to all students, because different things catch different, or hook different kids, Sometimes this will hook some kids and the close-up trip will hook other kids, and so just trying to be equitable and reach as many kids as we can, and giving people the opportunities and giving the parents some sort of expectations so they can have conversations with their kids, like, you're going into high school, here's what will hopefully come before you. Let's talk about what our family can afford and what our options are, and what can we do as a family. So, okay. Anyone else?
I move that we approve the overnight field trip to Yellowstone in March of 2025.
Second.
Moved by Sasha, second by Diana. Any other discussion? All in favor? All right, 7-0.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Well done.
Maybe before we leave the field trips, can I suggest, it might be good to put together a working group for this. I'd volunteer for it if anyone else is interested as well. I think first thing would be maybe consider who else we pull in outside of this room, department heads, administrators, but to come back to this body with a recommendation, or at least some options to discuss. But let's work it outside of here and then bring, a short list of considerations here.
Yeah, because it sounds like those conversations are starting to happen
I
in
thought
in the buildings anyways, so it,
I thought that was great to hear, so
Yeah.
let's, and
Yeah.
I think
no, agree.
taking it out of here will also expedite it, so we're better prepared.
Yeah. And we don't have to come up with a master plan. That's never going to change. So, like, to Jimmy's point, I think, we can have a debrief after these trips that are new, and invite those teachers in to say what are you thinking? Do you want to do it every year, every 4 years? Is it a bust? And, we're going to skip that one, or we've had 2 French trips. Which one was better?
I also think that there's a couple of different pieces to it. I don't know if it's separate. Well, I think it is separate conversations to some degree, because I think the one piece is field trips in general, right? Overnight field trips is the one conversation. The other is, in particular, as it applies to the FEFI's program and Payne grants. Other districts, I'm sure, run trips that don't have the FEFI's monies to, to rely on, but they still are able to do international trips. So I think we need to look at, and maybe I said international, maybe it's any overnight field trip, or maybe international falls into yet a different bucket, and what those things look like. But the separate conversation is what the FEFI's funding looks like in relation to all of that. And I think that's a bigger conversation with the FEFI's working group, because we've had some conversations around, okay, the fund is very healthy at this time. We have some guardrails, I'll call them, around that, around what the money can and can't be used for. But maybe some of that needs to change and expand, and that's some of the conversation that we're having. And we've talked, for example, about carving out a certain amount of money for certain projects every year, as opposed to everything being in one pot and everybody applying as they see fit. So I think there's a couple of different pieces there to
Did the
look at.
precedent for this come from the England trip? Like, does the England trip get, or do whoever organizes that, do they apply for a paying grant? Is that where these trips are all getting that idea from? And kind of, oh, they did it, so we can try and do it also?
Perhaps in part. I don't know that factually. I know that the field trip form and the questions that are being asked came from back when Lori LaFrance did the Costa Rica trip, and there were certain things that the school committee at that point wanted information on, and so that's the form that we're using. But that's a great question, Jimmy. I don't know.
I mean, how long has the England trip been going on?
Yeah.
I mean, because we've only really
I think, well,
consistently had pain funds for 12 years.
Yeah, so every 4 years, I think this was the 4th time they've gone, so.
But the England trip was happening when I was in high school.
So, okay, so that was only, what?
Couple more
12 years
years.
ago?
Decades. So we're not that old. Okay. Yeah, so I don't know what they did before we had, historically, we haven't had a consistent stream
Right.
of FEFI money until 2011,
Yeah.
2012.
Yep. And this, I have to say, this isn't necessarily a new conversation amongst the school committee members. I know that some fairly recent former school committee members had students at the high school, 2 at the same time, and it was, there were conversations about how expensive it was, because one of those years was the England trip, and then there were athletic fees and costs, and there was another trip during that time, and so this isn't new, and I think we do have to look at the entire picture of what we're asking parents to be able to support.
Yeah. And just knowing what's coming, I mean.
Be helpful,
we did
sure.
the close-up
Yep.
trip, so we're not doing we chose not to even look into the French and Spanish trip, so.
Right, yep.
Space things out.
Mhm.
Nice to know what's coming. Okay,
Can I go
great.
into
Yeah,
working group? Are people okay with that? That way we can
Yeah.
pursue it outside of this? Is there anybody else that would be interested in doing,
I mean, I really think.
solo, but.
I really think our piece is how much are we willing to foot the bill? And I think what trips and when is really coming from the school administrators and the principals. So I
Agreed,
wonder
yes.
if really, I guess 6th grade is when they start overnight trips with ecology school. So maybe they get middle school and high school to come together. So this is the calendar, and then they come up and say, okay, how do we plan this all out? And then bring it to us.
Yeah,
Mhm.
I
That
totally agree.
makes
I think there's
sense.
things about,
Yep.
how do we create equity? How do we make them more inclusive? What are our funding considerations? We could maybe provide input, Dr. Blake, to your point, input to FEFIs and funding there, but that's a separate conversation. But yeah, I totally agree with all of that. I think it helps us guide it, but the input needs to come from,
I can start it with the administration
yeah,
easily.
yeah. Anybody else? No?
I think with the FEFI's
I
conversation,
I
we've
can't
sort of
this
talked
spring.
about this is on
That's fine.
the agenda to kind of tackle.
Yeah.
But it is those bigger issues, going back to why we had, meetings with, Carl and
Right.
Barry and others kind of come in and give us some history and a little bit of kind of vision of what the fund could be.
Sasha, I'll jump in on that with you, just because it does kind of relate to the FEFIs in some roundabout way, and it wouldn't hurt for me to learn a little bit more, so.
That sounds great.
Alrighty, moving on to discussion and potential vote on our FY25 school budget. So I just wanted to update, I guess, anyone who's listening, the public, of sort of where we are in the process of our budget. We heard from the administrators. We got presentations on January 31st and February 1st. The draft superintendent budget has been on our website for the past month, right on the splash page. And tonight will be our, I believe, 4th meeting discussing the budget. So we have had a while, which is great. And I'm hopeful we can take a vote on it tonight and sort of transition it from the superintendent's budget to the school committee budget. We do present, as everyone knows, or the administrators, I guess, present to the finance committee next Tuesday and Wednesday, and potentially the following week on the 12th for the third night. Then it will progress to the voters in May at All-Town Meeting. So that said, do we have any sort of lingering questions or concerns or things we would like to discuss about the budget? And then we can move into a little bit, sort of, are we prepared for the finance committee presentations next week and anything we want to talk about that? Currently, the budget increase stands at 5.08%, which is the same as we had heard from in the presentations. And I think we were able to ask a lot of questions. And I have all my questions answered. I still need to spend a lot more time before the FinCom meeting to freshen up on all the details. But do people have further things they want to discuss about the budget?
No, I've looked it over multiple times. It seems like a fairly fair budget to me, and I think it addresses the things that need to be addressed. There's some things up in the air that can't be dealt with at this point, so I'm comfortable with it.
I'll reiterate, I'm pleased with what we do know, that we're able to make the override last a full 5 years. That's particularly important, and I'm happy with where we've landed with that.
And I think based on, and we'll get into the tri-board recap in a little bit, but I do think based on the discussions last night, there will be some, it's very fortunate that the overrides in the past have lasted closer to 7 years. So in some ways, I think some people think that that's now the new normal. So I think I would love to get there, but I think there's a lot of things telling us we might not get there for various reasons. But I think we need to sort of discuss, we'll go through the budget calculator with them, and there's a lot of assumptions baked into that may or may not, solid assumptions, but you never know what's going to
I
happen.
thought it was a fair
so.
question last
Yeah.
night. As you both pointed out, there were lots of other factors that went into that
Yeah.
that don't exist right now, and so just things to be considered.
Yeah, and I think, COVID played a big part of why the last override lasted as long as it did. And I was thinking today, we had some, unanticipated but necessary and really great investments in safety in the buildings over the past year. And so those were great investments, and I think have made our buildings and our students and our staff safer. But it was money spent. That maybe some of it we were planning on, but not all of it. So that's another factor. But is money well spent? Okay. Do we feel comfortable taking a vote to support the budget or not? Anyone like to make a motion?
We're like, yeah.
Move to
yeah, I
approve
was gonna say.
the FY '25 school budget as presented by the superintendent.
Second.
Count in that motion?
What the dollar amount?
I think I want the dollar amount. I think the motion should include the dollar amount. I have it.
Is $39,616,403.
You agree?
I do. It's right here. Yep.
Move again to support the superintendent's budget in that amount.
Second.
All right. Move to support the FY25 budget by Jeff, second by Sasha. Any further discussion? All in favor? All right.
Thank you.
Right. Yep.
Congratulations, you have a budget.
Have a budget.
Thanks for their hard work.
Congratulations, you don't.
But you're not done. Here. All right. So that's great. Okay. Do we want to have any discussion about presentation for the FinCom? Do we, I think their plan is for elementary schools, and I can confirm this with the finance director, or finance committee chair tomorrow, but I believe their hope is to have elementary schools and some discussion on special education, and then we'll do the beginning slides of sort of
Yeah.
budget
My-
drivers.
My intent is to do the beginning slides around enrollment, and, the different funding sources, the sort of the high-level overview. I'm planning on sending out the MCAS data to them in the form of the presentation that the school committee receives, so that we don't have to spend a lot of time on that next week. Special education is sort of woven throughout the budget, so it's difficult to just pull that out and talk about that in one night. So I think we'll be prepared to do perhaps central office, or district-wide, or facilities, one of the budgets that's a standalone at that meeting as well.
I mean, yeah. I believe there will be, yeah, and I have told the finance committee that we don't have a separate presentation on special education, because it's sort of, it's everywhere throughout the district, and it's not a sort of standalone department. So they know that. And then I believe the second night was obviously middle school, high school, and then whatever we don't.
Yep, and the middle school, high school, there's one or two school finance committee members that are interested in where our kids are going to school, so we'll have some of that data, and SAT scores. We'll have that data as well.
So is that if there's anything in the budget? Yep, go ahead.
I'm good.
Sure.
Some of those are not budget-related questions. I know you're not the one asking them.
They come up every year.
How can we better manage that so that those are addressed either ahead of time, not necessarily in the room? I don't mind having that conversation, but it's not a budget conversation.
I've been asking that
Sure, Mike.
question
Sure,
for
yeah.
7 years.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think we're trying. I mean, we prepare slides that we know get asked every year, and it is, to them, I would imagine it's their opportunity to ask anything they want about the school
In their
district to really- it's
eyes,
always
it does have, while not a direct correlation, they feel that there is a correlation between the schools that our students go to and the budget that's supporting it.
And it's, 62,
Yeah.
3% of the budget, so, it's,
Of the town,
Of
of
the
the
town.
overall budget, yeah.
right.
Yeah.
So it's, I think they're asking about the direction of the district, but we're trying to preempt those questions as much as we can, or have answers.
So I would say we heard from all 4 administrators in one evening. Didn't think that their presentations were as long this year, and part of that, I think, is the budget does not have a lot of changes. There's a lot of consistent numbers in there. And so I think in the preparation part of it is just sort of pacing that, and maybe the expectation is that there's more presented on the first night. Particularly if you're asking committee members to hold their questions until the end of that presentation. So again, I don't know that we need 3 nights of this, but that's what we're scheduled for.
Right.
We all know where the questions are going to be. You know, it's going to be on FTEs, manpower. It's going to be on the override calculator. And I think rightfully so, there's going to be one on use of alternative funds, because I think there is a concern, at least that I've expressed, about the reliability and long-term stability of some of those, and whether, you know, we may need those funds for other reasons. So I really think the best that we can do to try to drive to those things and try to, you know, make it more focused would be better.
I mean, I don't think the administrators would need to be there on a third night.
On the third night, no.
Um,
No, I have no intention of
No,
having them
I
at
don't
the,
either.
there.
So
at the
I
third
will
night.
make that clear. And the third night's tentative. It's penciled in, we might not need it. And I've expressed my opinion that I'd rather have 2 longer nights than, or 2 shorter nights, but I'm also a realist, so. Okay, so any other, you know, if there's anything you think of overnight or tomorrow, just definitely shoot Tom and Dr. Blake and myself an email. All right. Okay, we are moving on. Discussion on Whittier Tech School Committee representative. I just wanted to update everybody and make a public announcement that, as many people know, our Whittier Tech School representative's term is up March 31st. So we have been advertising and collecting interested candidates. We have 2 candidates that we have received letters of interest from. They are Gary James, who is our current Whittier Tech representative, is interested in continuing, so he has submitted a letter of interest. And we also have a letter of interest from a resident, Carol Sullivan. I believe I circulated both of those letters of interest to the committee. Both of them have been invited and will be coming to our meeting next week on the 7th for interviews. We will put them early on the agenda, so if the public wants to tune in, we will aim for, you know, between 7:20 and 7:40, I think is safe to say. So we are accepting questions from the other boards. I have received some from the select board, and the finance committee indicated last night that they might submit some questions. So Jeff and I are we can review those questions and decide on the final questions we'll be asking. And also, I just wanted to let the public know that we did have a bit of a discussion at the tri-board last night about, there is ongoing significant discussions at both the state legislature level and the sort of town administrator, town manager, mayor level from all 11 communities. There's a task force or committee formed with all of the town leaders to discuss the regional contract and sort of make some forward momentum on that. So it's not my understanding that the regional contract will really be on the shoulders of the Whittier Tech School Committee. It seems like that's being sort of addressed at a higher level.
Yep.
So I just want people to know that, you know, this Whittier Tech School Committee representative it's a school committee job, just like we have school committee jobs. Whittier is a district, so it's a big job with many of the same responsibilities we have. So, so I just want to keep that in mind. We're trying to get someone in for a school committee position, and I'm assuming there's general consensus that there, you know, needs to be a little more attention paid from all of us and all of us in town about what's happening at Whittier. So that is what is happening. And if any of you have questions you would like to ask, I know I got some from you, Tony. If anyone else has questions they would like to ask, and I don't want to have, 20 questions, but we can try to sort of narrow it down and have some good questions next week. Any questions on that? Just wanted to give an update. Right. Tri-board recap.
Actually, sorry, Kate, is the intention to vote that evening on the representative, or is that just
No, so the plan
interviews?
is to have the interviews on the 7th, next week, and then I was thinking, I guess we could vote that night, but I was thinking we would probably have a discussion and vote on our 21st meeting. There is a Whittier Tech School Committee meeting on March 13th, but I think even if we voted on the 7th, it would be a pretty tight turnaround for them to. You have to drive to Haverhill and get sworn in by the, I don't know exactly how it works, so we had to get sworn in.
The current term doesn't expire till the
Right.
31st.
Right, so they probably wouldn't be attending till the April meeting anyways.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay, thank you.
so, yeah, so I say we discuss and vote on the 21st. Okay. Tri-board, so that was long last night. We had we have a really big agenda. I guess I was just gonna kind of go through the topics we discussed and see if people had feedback on them or discussion. We had early on, we had the NORESCO presentation. And Rick Mitchell's recommendation was to go for the better plan for FY '26. I don't know how people, I think it was nice to hear it sort of all together instead of having us go back and watch other people's meetings. So in that way, I liked having that presentation sort of all together, so we all heard it together. My question was, I'm just curious how involved Chris Race has been, and I'd be curious on his thoughts on, like, if you read the details of some of the things in that plan, for example, the LED lighting overhaul is dependent on some infrastructure stuff we have, so I don't know if we have the infrastructure and,
So they've done all of that work as part of their study?
We have, no, they have.
NORESCO has. And Chris and I have been involved in the process
Okay.
all along, and have attended the various meetings that took place. So, Chris's big concern is making sure that this building is involved in the process. I think that's the best option, is
It's a
what
good
he's.
building to
yeah,
investment,
yeah.
to invest in, because he's very
So,
young by
yeah,
Switch
by
standards.
those, yeah. So he's, we wanted to make sure that things that were being included and considered involved this building, so.
And it does.
So the two options that are being considered, I think, are, the better and the best option do meet that criteria.
Yeah, and even the good is a lot of the LED lighting, but not as much.
Yeah.
The substantial stuff.
Yep.
So, we will have, when this comes before town meeting, we will have to take a position on it. Sounds like it's not till the fall. But I do think we need to sort of just be paying attention to it. Other people have questions about that or feedback?
I don't know that I got the opinion it's going to be in the fall. I think that there could potentially be a preference from the select board to maybe try to proceed with it in the spring, it sounded like.
The
But I
warrant's,
think there,
the warrant's closed. Was
And
it
it's
on the
on the
warrant?
warrant.
Oh, it is.
It's
It's
Okay.
on there, there is a
Yeah.
placeholder for it
But
on the
there-
warrant,
yeah, but
so.
there seemed to be some pushback from some members last night of the tri-board saying, hey, really, there's more information that we need before we can put a vote on this.
Okay. Yeah, so I guess so we will need to pay attention then pretty closely in the next couple weeks, because we will certainly need to take a position on it, because it does involve our buildings.
Well, and I think while some of it will be, you know, internal to the buildings and not visible, part of one of the projects that's being considered are the solar canopies covering all of our parking lots. I think that's something that people may, you know, that may raise an eyebrow for folks in the community, you know, is that,
It was out front, too.
yeah, both sides of the building. Well, I think it's worthy, is it, you know, I mean, we're getting significant pushback from the community on what the facade of the public safety building looks like, and now we're gonna go putting up a solar canopy over the entire parking lot on both sides of the building? What is that gonna do to the look of town, right?
Right.
I think it's gonna raise some eyebrows.
Yeah, I hadn't realized, I assumed it was just in the parking lots until I looked at the plan.
I wanted to say, I liked the point at the end of the evening that you stated, Dr. Blake, about some of the things in the capital plan, but also related to the NORESCO proposals, are to make sure that this 25-year-old building doesn't end up like Whittier. And that's part of the maintenance and the improvements that they're looking at. And I thought, you know, last year, I believe it was last spring, or maybe it was winter, the woman, Mary, who was in the position prior, came to us and asked us if, when looking at this building, would we want to go with 100% of an air quality improvement and air conditioning system? And we said yes in support of that. And I still feel like that would be a great improvement in this building, the biggest building in Ipswich.
Biggest energy user, yep.
Right. And we've already had boiler issues in this building. So,
The only item I'd like more information on is the lighting in the elementary schools and the payback period, especially for where they're at, before we proceed with that. That's in the good option. It's in all three options, but that's something.
The LED,
Yeah, that's something we should better understand.
okay.
If they're replacing that and it's a 20-year payback period, then it's not worth us pursuing. So I'd just like to understand that.
Well, I mean, what's
We
the,
should discuss
and what's
whether
the,
it's worth us
yeah,
pursuing.
what's the breakdown of cost versus
That's right.
time to pay
Yeah,
back?
I didn't see that detail in there, so that's just one other thing. That's one other level of detail I'd like to understand. It was one single line item.
Yeah, and I
it
think
was
you
grouped
could feel
together.
free to reach out to Rick
Yeah.
Mitchell with that
That was the
question
only other thing,
directly, yeah,
I think for us to better understand.
yeah.
yeah, we can, I would entertain, if folks have questions, specific questions, get them to me and I can share them directly with Rick, just so he's not getting inundated with questions from people. Put them all together.
I think the LED payback is 10.6 years. But that's on all of the projects, so.
Yeah, that's overall, and so I assume it's probably the same for all of them, but I'd like to understand I think that was close to $1 million. What's the cost for each of the elementary schools?
Okay.
That's an important consideration for us as well.
Yeah, and then I'm curious about more Jamie Fay's discussion about how expensive the carports were. That is a significant cost in the good plan. I don't know much about it, even though he thanked me for being so involved. I've really only been to 4 climate resiliency committee meetings, so I should not be in the same sentence with Carolyn Britt and Mike Johnson, but I appreciate it. But I'm still learning, so. All right, we also talked about the specialized stretch code presentation, which similarly I think was nice for all of us at the tri-board to sort of hear it at the same time. I thought it was very well presented. I kind of want to steal some of his slides for town meeting because I think it was a nice description. So I couldn't make the climate resiliency meeting last week, but I will hopefully be able to make the one in March. So, and similarly, it was on the warrant last year, so we will need to take a position on that as well. Not for a while. I think the Finance Committee bumped out their warrant hearings, so I don't think we'll need to we have probably a month before we need to take a position on warrant articles, but we will need, I think we should be taking a position on that one.
So, as I had asked questions yesterday, yes, my concern, are we talking about our concerns of pros and cons right now? Okay. So, the residents of Ipswich could possibly want to opt in to this as it stands now. They may say, you know, this makes sense, you know, it doesn't involve additions, you know, X, Y, and Z. But the answer he had given last night about that it will be changing, and I think he said every 3 years or so, and, you know, Ipswich won't be able to check in again. It's just would automatically be required by the towns that have opted in for that. So that's a concern for me. If anybody,
That's the way the stretch code is now.
but
Once
this
you're
would
in,
be,
you're sort of in.
right.
So
this is
that is happening with
true.
the stretch code as well.
True.
Which we have been in. but
Right.
Yeah, but yeah.
So this would be, you know, one other thing that we would have to just follow the updates without having a say, you know. So the other was, and I think I'd mentioned this before, or Michael Doherty mentioned this last night, or asked the question about the technology that, and the cost that would go into pre-wiring a home, and if someone still wants gas, and they're not going to use that wiring that's been pre-wiring, for, you know, how many years is it until like that goes into effect? 15, something?
Until what goes into effect?
Until they have to use electric.
I don't think
We don't
they'll
know.
ever, I
I
don't
don't
think
think
they'll
we-
ever have to. You can't force.
So, okay, so, you know, if that's the case, then they would be forced to pre-wire their homes for something that they may not have to use, or by the time if they did have to use it, it would be advanced. There would be something else that would, is being used at that point that's perhaps better. You know, technology changes so quickly, so, and the last thing is, to me, it should be the homeowner's choice in terms if they want to pre-wire and set themselves up for it that way, or if they want to, if it is required, for them to then do it at that point. So I feel like that should be a homeowner's call, whether it's pre-wiring or when it's time that they would have to, if they ever do, to do it then. Because you could pre-wire and then you could sell, or, you know, that it's an investment to a home, and I just feel like that should be more of the homeowner's call, now or later. Risk it, you know, or, you know,
I think
wait,
their argument is just that it's more cost-effective to pre-wire
right,
versus, you know,
Right.
it's that future-proofing
right.
concept there.
Right. But it would be, but then the homeowner may choose to do that. But I just think that's more of a homeowner, I think that's my feeling. So if, you know, want to talk more about it.
For last town meeting, did we, as a school committee, weigh in on stretch code?
We did.
Remember, it had
Because it
all sorts of issues of the warrant article not matching some,
Yeah.
yeah.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
I mean, we weighed in on it because it has implications on school buildings that are new.
Oh.
I mean, so I think that was our feeling, like we should weigh in on it because it does.
Asked to, I think maybe
um,
we didn't, and then we were maybe asked to
Yeah,
reconsider that.
yeah.
We did.
Right.
It was 4-3.
It was 43 in support.
But that's the other question I had asked last night, if the town does not opt in, but yet the school is compliant with the specialized stretch code, will we still get financial benefits from the state? And so he was going to get back to us about
Yeah,
that.
he did. I just
Oh, he
didn't forward
did?
it to you. Sorry, I'll forward it to
Oh.
you. I had
Oh, okay.
I didn't have a chance today. I did hear back. I'll forward it to you.
It's a fast turnaround, perfect.
Well, it's not a clear cut answer.
No.
Not on his fault. but I
No,
mean, the MSBA
sure,
is a little
sure.
bit,
Okay.
The MSBA language is a bit vague on whether or not the town has to pass it to get
Yeah.
those incentive points, but either way, I think we still have sort of a month to take a position on these things, but I think it was good to get a presentation on the early side, again, all together. All right, we talked about budgets for the town and capital. We had a 3A update. I was thinking it would be nice to get one of us to just pay attention to those meetings. I have tried to go multiple times, and I can't seem to fit it into my schedule, so I just think it would be, if anyone's interested in sort of learning more about 3A or being involved, I think it'd be great for someone to do that if anyone's interested. And I know there's a community forum coming up in, sounds like March or April. That will not be coming till September. But, and I know that the group that's working on the SOIs is talking a little bit about it in terms of enrollment and sort of trying to gather some information, so.
Yeah, I definitely need to know a lot more information. I'm sure we're probably not alone in that. I was just confused, but yeah.
They have a great website.
Yeah.
You can get to it from the town website. So
Okay.
There's a great website that has a lot of information. I mean, it's confusing. I mean,
Yeah.
the website's not confusing, just zoning is confusing.
Right. I know they said they wouldn't need to build new units. So I was just wondering, what if they don't come up with a 40% that's within the half mile of
They have
current?
to. I mean, that's the mandate, so.
But they wouldn't need to build new ones to fill in
It's not
that
building,
40%.
It's about zoning. So it's just about zoning for building, so having the capacity to build.
Right, so potentially,
Yeah.
they could build, or whoever's hired to build. Okay,
Whoever owns it,
Or
right?
whoever, I mean,
right,
yeah, we're not gonna.
right.
We're not gonna.
But it would be zoned differently.
Correct.
Yeah.
Or maybe not, because some of it might already apply, right?
Exactly, yeah. And that's, I think, what they really are working on in the next month or two is figuring out, what, in these areas that they've identified, what's already there, how many units are already there in these areas they're thinking about. How many units more would it need to be for 3A? And then sort of what's the difference? Because,
Right.
Yeah, because there's already, in some of the areas you're already looking, there are already housing units, so those
Yeah,
count. It's not
Yeah.
like we're starting from 0
Right.
units.
no, that was so great to have. That's
Yeah,
a big deal.
That's a big difference.
And they mentioned 20, we could do up to 20% 40B housing, which would help. I don't even know what our deficit is for,
Affordable housing,
yes, is that not 40B?
affordable housing.
Yes. So, wondering if they could, guarantee that the 20% of the 971 or whatever will be affordable housing. I know that it was mentioned that we could go up to that, but, to make sure that we fulfill our need for affordable housing.
All right, we also talked a little bit about the school building project. It wasn't really on the agenda. I just had written down that question of potentially reaching out to the MSBA about whether school repairs will hurt our chances, and how do they take that into account, so we can sort of take that under advisement. Any other discussion or questions about the
I was just
driveway?
going to say, I thought you answered that really well, Dr. Blake, how you really just what we keep talking about, that it's partly the building, the systems, but also just the way the education is being delivered in the buildings are the difficulties that we're having.
Yeah. Yep.
And then Jen whispered to me after I was done talking, the fact that if I heard you correctly, most, if not all of the projects that were approved this year had done
Boiler
replacements
replacement,
and
roof
thing- right,
replacement, window replacement.
fairly recently.
Oh, really?
right.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
I didn't know. Yeah, that's great to know.
Everybody has to. We still have kids in the building.
Right.
Right.
Right, and I think
Right.
as long as we're
still have
explicit
to
in
be
the
usable.
SOIs that we're doing this, or, you know, they're sort of, they have to be done, and, you know, they shouldn't hold that against us, and there's still lots of other things about our buildings that are insufficient.
I had a couple questions in the capital plan. Under high school, there's a kitchen equipment replacement for 42,000. And we're just wondering, how do we figure out what comes out of the food service revolving account, which I know we're doing some upgrades in the elementary school kitchens, versus something that comes out of the capital account?
So that's a terrific question. What I've done, since I've been here and working with Megan Pearson, the food service director, is she has a running list that she's been sort of pulling together for the last couple of years for everything from smaller equipment, like blenders even, to a larger equipment like a dishwasher. We have not been really acting upon some of her requests in recent years. So we're trying to do as much as we can to meet her needs within the food service budget. We've created a food service revolving fund budget that includes being able to meet some of those needs that she's had for a while now. So the list that she provided, when Chris Race asked all administrators to provide a list of things, it's, he really captured her recommendation for what would be a larger food service item, meaning food service equipment item, versus some of those that are sort of smaller. So we don't have a policy on that, but what Megan and I have been doing is try to keep improvements that we're doing within the food service revolving fund in the $10,000 to $20,000 range, if not smaller than that, because she's got lots of food service equipment that is, some of which is pretty outdated. So that's sort of the rule of thumb that Megan and I have, and Chris is tackling some of the larger items.
The other one was just about the electric car charging stations, and those are just say district-wide. Do we know where, it's $30,000, do we know where those are being installed? And is that, for some reason, I thought that was a combination of school capital and ELD when they did the ones out here at the high school, but I don't know where they are.
So I don't have the backup for it here, but I want to say that when we installed the chargers out here, they ran the conduit.
It's more in this
So
building.
there's more, we ran the conduit, the wire and the conduit across that fenced area right next to where the current charger is, so that we can install additional chargers.
But it's at the middle school, high school, not at
Yeah,
Bain
I
or-
believe so. I believe so. I don't have the
Do you know where
backup
it
in
is?
here.
Yeah, it's out back.
Oh, I know where it is
Oh,
here,
okay.
but
Yeah, yeah.
it's just in the district-wide category, so I wasn't sure if they were bringing that to another building.
Can I ask a follow-up question on that? Is there offsetting revenue, incentives, credits for that?
They do
Oh.
charge the people to use these ones. I don't know where that goes, ELD or wherever.
How does that offset it?
It really isn't.
Is it equivalent to what we're paying for it? My hesitation is we're subsidizing someone else's electric vehicle.
Your speculation is pretty
Correct.
spot on.
Yeah.
There is no real incentive other than for the good of the order, if you will. It is not a revenue, it is a revenue generator, but it doesn't even really come close to offsetting the cost of providing that. Also, if I'm remembering correctly, there are also certain times of day when there's not a charge. There's not a charge at all times. During school operations, there's an built-in incentive to when those were installed, if I'm remembering correctly, to have students and staff and faculty be able to utilize those as an incentive to encourage electric vehicles and that. So it's only during, I believe, it's only during non-school hours that there's a charge.
I understand the incentive, same as the federal, state rebates. When I think about our specific budget, ours as well as the town's, equivalent of subsidizing someone's gas because they drove here, I have hesitation
And is
of
there, yeah.
school and town funds for some of that, given the financial situation that we're in. I think we should reconsider some of those.
I know when the kids, this was a kid-driven project several years ago. And I believe that Lori LaFrance still uses that data in her courses, so it's part of their coursework to monitor that, but I don't know to what extent, and I can get back to you, I can dig in on it and find out more information. if you'd like.
Maybe just before we proceed, I think that's one to take a look at of, are we comfortable with continuing to spend that money? $30,000 is not insignificant, especially on a periodic basis.
But it's not our money. Right?
No,
not-
it's in the
It is
capital
not
plan.
our money,
In
it's
the capital
It is in the
I mean, your
capital
points
plan.
are still well
Capital plan.
taken, but
It's-
it's not coming out of our
Right,
budget.
it's
but
not school
still-
budget money, but it's
Yeah,
It's town,
it's town
Yeah.
capital money allocated for a school facility.
but to your point, it's
And the
$30,000 that could be
power for
spent
it.
on something else.
so if someone's charging their car there, the electricity they're using, because it's on the middle school, high school, it's middle school, high school electricity. So we're paying for that. Now, that's
That might-
way less, but we are directly funding that out of the school budget.
Correct. And that is where what does come in as an offset gets applied.
Okay,
But
that's,
to your original question, if I'm remembering your question correctly, or if I heard it correctly, the revenue generated,
there's no offsetting cost.
it does not meet the cost, but it certainly, it is applied there when received.
Okay.
Do we know if there's a town-wide master plan for electrical vehicle charging stations? Is there like
I-
a end game of like, we're gonna have 5 here, 5 here, 5 here?
Not that I'm aware of. Not that I'm aware of.
That's what I'm,
That was something that the previous ELD director, I think, was working toward.
I mean, it's a little out of our lane, but I am just
Yeah,
curious.
yeah.
I don't want to just be haphazardly putting them in when the opportunity rises.
Yep.
I think there should, I imagine there's a strategic plan for that, but that's something I can find out. So do we want to give that feedback to anyone on the capital plan or about the, that be,
Just did. You just did. Guess I'll have to take it back to them. I'll figure out this information, get back to folks. So is there a question about whether or not we should fund this then? Is that the basic question that we're asking?
yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
And what,
Yeah, the installation, the maintenance, and then the ongoing electricity, we, the town, the school are directly subsidizing.
Since it's on the school property too, couldn't anybody, not even just a teacher or student, just pull in, park, and get a ride elsewhere and just charge their, if it is free during the
empty,
school
I don't
day,
see
it
why
doesn't
not.
just
I mean, you guys don't
have to
have
be.
parking stickers anymore, so you don't.
There's no
yeah.
enforcement on
Yeah.
it being
And I'm
directed
assuming
for
there's,
somebody here.
someone's demonstrated a need for it,
Yeah.
I hope.
I was gonna look tomorrow to see how many.
I mean, I do see people plugged in there, but I assume
There's always
someone's
somebody plugged in.
pulled
I know
some
there was
data.
the other day somebody who didn't have an electric car parked there, and then it was a whole
So,
whole
yeah.
issue. But
Yeah, there are a few electric vehicles that are driven by staff or students that do park there. I know that one of the superintendent visitors that I had the other day drives an electric vehicle, and he parked there, so.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'm more comfortable supporting it if there has been some data behind a need, and it's part of sort of a master plan. But if there's not a master plan and we don't know if there's a need, we're just assuming there's a need, I'd be less hesitant to.
I think to Jimmy's question, which was a great one, it was the intention all along that when during non-school hours, that the public would be invited and encouraged to park there, overnights and weekends, and whenever there's multiple of activities, sports field or the Dolan Center or anything, right? There's lots, this is a community, campus. And that's probably one of the reasons why it was, they were put here in the first place, to encourage just that.
Be glad to get that information for next week.
Yeah, I'm fully supportive of the greater good. It's the school and the town subsidizing
Right, and
private
how much is that?
individuals charging their personal vehicles that I'm a little concerned about.
Jeff, did you have other questions?
Mine was on the
that? Oh, okay.
location, and
Okay.
we
All right.
clarified that, I think, so.
All right, superintendent's administrative report, sorry.
Okay. Yep.
Jimmy,
Yeah, Jimmy, thank you.
In the morning.
Hi, Timmy.
Yeah, seems like it's been a while, but we had vacation period in there. So a couple of weeks ago, I attended the governing board meeting of AASA, which is the Superintendent's Association. And then it was followed by the National Conference on Education. That was the week before break, a couple of days. It's interesting to hear, what other superintendents around the country are up against. It seems like we're all dealing with funding issues, the lack of resources. And in some areas of the country, we're hearing bits and pieces about staffing shortages, but in other areas of the country, it's like at crisis points where they don't have enough teachers for any positions. And they're really struggling. We also spent time during the executive board looking at the legislative agenda and advocacy work in Washington. The theme of the conference this year was being here for the kids. Workshops focused on the health and wellness and the importance of superintendents taking care of themselves and finding that proper work-life balance, which is a challenge for many of us. There was also a lot of workshops that I targeted my attention to that focused on AI and its impact on the future of education. We're starting to do a lot of work with AI here in the district, and I wanted to learn more about it so I can be part of those conversations. The presenters linked AI to the birth of the internet, likened it to that and as being a disruptive technology. Other workshops I attended focused on school security measures, including school safety film, something that we're looking at, wearable panic buttons, and crisis response systems. This week's been very busy as I talk about the work-life balance. Beginning with a few meetings with staff members Monday during the day, touching base with the administrators, as we came out of break. And then we had the facility subcommittee tours that Monday night. Tuesday, we welcomed the Sullivans to Ipswich with their message on the dangers of underage drinking. The presentation to the students was very well received by everyone that I've talked to. kids have been buzzing about it in the buildings since then. The evening presentation to the parents unfortunately wasn't well attended, but those who did attend felt that it was an excellent message. Kathy Sullivan had lost her daughter as a result of underage drinking and a subsequent drowning. Her husband, Chris, different story. Chris was a former NFL player, and he talked about his addiction struggles and family dynamics and what that looked like growing up. And he talked about, just open communication with your kids. I think to Kate's earlier point, it was not the gloom and doom, or to our student reps' comments. It wasn't about the gloom and doom of don't do this, don't do that, but just how communicating and how that can make or break the outcomes in situations. Because in that situation, there were a series of events that took place, and had different decisions been made at any point during that fateful day for Kathy and her daughter, the outcome would have been very different. So, I want to thank Ipswich Aware for their partnership, and in particular Mariah Corso for bringing them here and making that program possible. I also hosted 3 other superintendents on Tuesday who wanted to learn more about how we organize our music education program here in Ipswich. Last Christmas time, Michael Coelho brought one of our ensembles over to Essex Tech to play during our superintendent's luncheon, where we honor our administrative assistants. So it's a really nice luncheon. So he came over and played, and so for people that weren't aware of how great Ipswich music is, they were. And so folks have been asking questions, and there's been a lot of talk on the North Shore just about how our program runs and how we do the scheduling for it. So when the folks were here, we were able to see the 4th grade musicians just getting started with their lessons at the beginning of their journey in our music program. We saw a general music class, and then we finished the day here watching the middle school band and orchestra practice and have rehearsals. So after school ended, Michael Coelho was able to take time to answer questions that folks had just about how the schedule works and how several of the music educators bounce from building to building. Yesterday, I participated in the Race, Equity, and Diversity and Inclusion course that I'm involved in, where we tackled another problem of practice. Last night, we had the tri-board meeting, and today I had a mediation regarding a former employee with representatives from our insurance provider and legal counsel. We were able to settle that mediation today. And finally, today I met with Becky and Alicia for our monthly IEA meeting and just talked through a couple of issues. So, a busy week.
Questions? Comments? Well, you'll have a short one next week because it'll only be a week. Superintendent report next week will be short.
Oh, yes, my report will be short. The week will be long because we're out again.
Week's
But
always
I think I'm out every night next week, I think.
Yeah, this week and next week are due. All right, thank you. Subcommittees, working groups, and liaison reports. We haven't met since February 8th, so do we have, I assume some groups met?
Yeah, I can talk about facilities. Our focus, as you know, right now is the SOI. I sent an email so you have the dates. A couple key things coming up where it moves from the work that we've been doing, so we're starting to share now drafts with you, principals, we'll also be sharing with the select board. So we're near finalizing the first draft. We'll have that complete on the 5th, that's Tuesday of next week, ahead of Thursday's meeting. Our intention there is to share with all of you on Tuesday, so you have time to read it. We'll discuss a little bit of it. We're not going to go through the full thing in Thursday's meeting. You'll have then till the following Friday, the 15th, to make any comments, questions in it. Please know our expectation is not that you're going through it with the same rigor that we are as part of the working group. Think about it similar to the policy or our newsletters, where we want to make sure you've had a chance to see it, you feel represented, you feel comfortable putting your name on it, but we're not looking for you to add check facts, ratios, square footage, things like that. We'll ask for your feedback by the 15th. It's that following Friday, so you have almost 2 weeks with it, week and a half with it. We'll take that and then post the final version on the 19th, that following Tuesday, to then bring to our meeting on the 21st to discuss, potentially vote on that as the final. That sets us up to then have it locked and ready to submit on April 2nd. It's not actually due till April 12th. We've been intentional about including buffer in case there's additional questions, discussions coming out of these meetings, so we have some buffer time built in. I have a placeholder. We need to bring it to the select board for their approval. They're voting on submitting an SOI, not the content itself. We'll still have that content. We'll still have the draft and a final version to share with them. And our recommendation is they're meeting on the 18th and the April 1st, so add to the agenda for one of those two meetings.
Okay, yeah, and I did ask Sarah Player last night, but it was like 10:30 at night, so she probably won't remember, but I have that on my to-do list tomorrow to reach out to her to see if we can come on the 18th. And if anyone, I'm happy to go. I think I wouldn't mind if you come or someone from the facilities group
Yeah.
comes with us. I mean, they did it last year, so they approved it last year, and again, it's just it's just authorizing submission. We need their signatures, but, and there is a fair amount of language that needs to be in that, I believe, which, again, we did it last year, and Laura set it up, and it's on the MSBA website, the voting requirements, so we'll have to pull that together, but I'll see if we can get on the 3/18 meeting, just, again, to give us wiggle room if something happens,
Yeah, let us know.
go after.
The only other thing, less for us, but just so you're aware, we'll be submitting, or be sharing that draft with the elementary principals as well, for them both to contribute, but we'll also be asking, or for their feedback, but also asking them specifically to contribute. As Diana had mentioned, it's not just about the physical buildings, it's about the learning environment. We want to make sure that they have a voice, and that's specifically being included in both of the SOIs. So that's an important piece for us as well.
When are
Done
you
that in the
hoping
past, but we want to make sure we're taking a look at it again this year.
When are you hoping to share it with them?
We'll share it with them on the 5th as well. So Tuesday, we'll share the first draft with them as well and ask for their feedback on the 15th, just
Okay.
like with this body.
And that feedback, are you asking for comments in the document, emails to you? I'm just a little,
Former comments in the document, well,
Okay.
it's in our drive right now. We'll publish it to all of you. You have access to it, but we'll publish it when it's ready. And for you to make comments in the document itself so that we can
we just have to
incorporate
avoid
and answer.
any back and forth conversations in the document to abide by open meeting law, so we can, I think, I just don't want to have any conversations
so.
in the
Want to
document.
just, you receive them, the comments, if people just message you and then,
If you include your comments, we'll resolve them in a following meeting where we're in session. I think we're okay. Right?
Yeah,
So long as
yeah.
there's no back and forth electronically, we're okay then.
Yep, exactly,
Is that, okay,
yeah,
I think
that
that works
works.
fine for us. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. So, yeah, so the answer was there, yes, and just make them right, either comment or notes right in the document.
And how much do you think, are we tweaking it? Are we changing 30% of it, or what would you, how significantly different will they be from?
I think it's nice going through it with a fresh set of eyes. I think a big part is like, we've used Manchester Essex as a great example. Like, theirs is just very easy to read, so even just like adding spacing. We're double checking numbers, we're making sure we're capturing updates, or in other situations, more failures or problems. And then we are hoping to get, more enhanced information about the education, although that will be available kind of on the second pass for the school committee, since that's not going to be, we're not going after that till the 5th as well. But I guess content-wise, I don't think it's going to be huge content changes. It'll just be hopefully more easy to read and digest.
Yeah, I mean, the format changed, so
Yeah.
it was quite, it was kind of redundant last time, just because of the way the
Yeah.
questions were, so if it's more, it seems like they improved the form more.
Ish.
They tried. Okay, thank you for your work on that. Other subcommittees, work groups?
Can I just add, I feel like I owe it to everybody, while I was a little late to sit down. I was talking to Lori LaFrance about the sustainability policy, just wanted to update everybody that there's a group at the elementary level that's kind of using Framingham's policy as a template, trying to make it our own. There's work happening at the middle school and high school levels, then we're all going to kind of come together and then figure out who else we need to share it out to before it comes here. Again, with the deadline, hopefully by June.
Okay. Anyone else? Negotiations, we're hoping to meet in the next couple weeks to start. Working groups, has IEF ever met? Or do you-
IEF met, we did not make it because I was with the facilities folks on Monday night, and
We had a horse problem in the family.
worse
You had a-
problem.
You know what?
No,
He
it
had
was,
a family issue that he had
Yeah.
to deal with.
it's the kind of thing you don't see coming.
Okay, we will,
But needless to say, neither of us made it.
got it, understand. I want to know more. Thank you. Okay, anybody else? Okay, great, thank you. New business. Vouchers and bills should be all set. Consent agenda. Move the Ipswich School Committee to approve the following meeting minutes from February 2nd, 2024, meeting minutes from February 8th, 2024, a donation in the amount of $300 from Bank Gloucester to be used for the Racing Team Challenge and deposited into the high school gift account, and a donation in the amount of $5,000 from the Institution for Savings to be used for the Racing Team Challenge and deposited into the high school gift account.
So moved.
Moved by Diana,
Second?
second by Matt. All in favor? Oh, questions?
I'm
on
going
the
to
minutes?
abstain from approving the minutes on February 1st because I was not in attendance.
Okay. How do we do that? Do we
I
vote?
think we do a vote, mine is not included.
Okay. All in favor? So,
60707.
got that?
Okay, yep.
So there's 4 items on the consent agenda.
70.
Okay, done.
All right, motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Diana, second by Jeff. All in favor? Thank you. All right, thank you, Ipswich. Good night. Thank you. See you next week.